All right, here we go. I have loaded the PowerPoint for you to see on the screen. And we are going to begin on page 22 of your lab manual, and I am signed into Van Greiner, and we are going to look at the human musculature. So remember, on page 22, we're going to be locating the following structures, and where it says additional structures, we do not need to locate those ones in this particular image. So let's go ahead and look at the image on page 22 first. So actually I'm going to have to back out of here and go to the correct screen. So we are going to be looking at the ventral, thorax, and abdomen first, okay? So let me make this bigger for you to see. And on this image, it's saying identify biceps brachii. So where do we see biceps brachii? If I use my pointer, it's this blue muscle right here. So biceps brachii, okay? What do we need to know about biceps brachii? It is partially deep to the deltoid and pectoralis major muscles, and it is the strongest supinator of the forearm. Okay, so those are the two things that you need to know about that. The next one on our list is asking us to identify brachialis. So they technically don't have brachialis identified on this one, but they do on the next image. So we will locate brachialis on the next image because it's a deeper muscle. Okay, so we're going to do superficial muscles first and then deep. So next up, let's look at the deltoid. So we see the deltoid is this red muscle right through here. So if you were looking at this laterally, you would see that this covers the entire shoulder. Okay, like where you would get a shot in your arm. The next one we're being asked to identify are both our internal and external obliques. These are the more superficial muscles, so we are going to see the external obliques in this image, and then the internal obliques over here. Okay, so we'll look at those in the next image. Okay. Next up, we have the linea alba. It's not identified on this one, but it's a straight line right down the middle. Next, it's asking us to identify pec major, which is this one, and then you'll see pec minor is going to be on the deep side in a moment. And then we also have rectus abdominis, we'll look at in the next one, as well as transversus abdominis. Okay, so this latissimus dorsi is not a very good image, so let's go ahead and we'll look at latissimus dorsi in another image. All right, let's go ahead and get out of here and go to the next. Okay, so these are our deep muscles. So let's blow this one up so that you can see. So on this one, we also would like to identify biceps brachii is cut in this image. You can see it right here. Okay. Next up on our list is brachialis. So this is where we're going to find the image over here that you couldn't see highlighted because this is deeper. Okay. So here's your brachialis. The next one it's asking us to identify is the deltoid. So up here you can see that the deltoid has been cut, but over here you can see that the deltoid is nice and rounded over the entire shoulder. Next up, it's asking us to identify the differences between the external obliques and the internal obliques. So you can see the external lies on top of the internal, and then here's your transversus abdominis. I know that was out of order, but they're all right here, okay? And then here's your rectus abdominis, okay? And then this straight line right down the middle is that linea alba, that line. Okay, so back over to pec major and pec minor. So we know that underneath of pec major lies pec minor. So here's our pec major muscle, and that has been retracted back so that we can see our pec minor muscles right through here, okay? Additionally, it's asking us to identify rectus abdominis, which we already did, and transversus abdominis, which we already did as well. So all of the other ones that are listed on here, you can go ahead and cross off because those are the additional structures that we do not need to know for now, okay? So let's go to the next image. And this would be on page 23. Actually, let's stay in line with the book. Okay, so let's go to page 23. Okay, so let's do this one first. This is slide 16. Of the Van Greiner page, and then this is page 23 in your lab book. So we're going to go straight down the line. Remember, we don't need to identify teres major and teres minor in this picture, just the muscles above that. So the first muscle it is asking us to identify in this image is the deltoid. So we can see the deltoid highlighted in this kind of teal color here and here. And then the next muscle it's asking us to identify are the external obliques. So if you slide down here, you can see that the external obliques are these guys right through here, okay? These blue. The next one on our list that it's asking us to identify are both the gluteus maximus and the gluteus medius. So we have gluteus maximus, this one is bigger, okay, both the green, and then gluteus medius, the yellow, right above maximus. Next up on our list is infraspinatus. So when we are looking at the scapula, infraspinatus lies on the lower portion of the spine of the scapula. So it's this gray piece on both sides, okay? After infraspinatus, it's asking us to identify latissimus dorsi. So it is this vast red area highlighted right here, latissimus dorsi. And then we have this white area, which is called the lumbodorsal fascia. Remember, we talked about the identification of where to find things based on their name, and lumbodorsal fascia is very expressive of where to find it. Next up on your list is the trapezius. So this bright blue area right here is your traps, your trapezius muscles. The next muscles that we're asked to identify are the 3 triceps brachii muscles. So we have our triceps brachii long head, our triceps brachii lateral head, and then if you were to pull those back, you could see below that is the medial head of triceps brachii. Okay? So you have your long head, your lateral head, and your medial head. All right. Our next page in our lab manual on page 24 is the ventral thigh. All right, so on page 24 of your lab manual, let's locate these following structures. So the first one we are looking for is adductor longus. So on this image, it is sort of this white muscle right through here, adductor longus. And then the next one it asks you to identify is adductor magnus, which is this little green guy right here. And then right below that is gracilis. Okay, remember groin. And then the next one it asks us to identify is pectineus. Okay, this is right in this pink area right here. And then our rectus femoris is this cut muscle right here and right here. And it's cut so that we can see vastus intermedius below that. So we have rectus femoris. And then the next one it asks us to identify is sartorius, this purple muscle that runs straight across the leg superficially. And then this tensor fascia lata runs right along the lateral edge of the thigh. It's this yellow muscle right here. And then our vastus muscles, intermedius, lateralis, and medialis. So the first one is vastus intermedius, which is that one that the femoris is cut back from, rectus femoris is cut back from so that we can see. And then we have vastus lateralis, which is this lateral muscle right here for lateralis. And then we have vastus medius, which is right here, the medial portion of the leg, this red right here. Okay? So those are the muscles that we are going to be looking at in this image. Okay? You do not need to worry about iliacus, psoas major, psoas minor, or quadratus lumborum. The next image in our book on page 25 is the dorsal thigh. So let me exit and find our dorsal thigh. All right, here we are, superficial dorsal thigh. So in this image, we are going to be identifying, going in order, adductor magnus. Okay, adductor magnus is your green muscle right here. Next up in your book is biceps femoris. Okay, that jumps over here. Next up is gastrocnemius, this blue muscle right through here. And then gluteus maximus, which is this big muscle up here, okay? Next up on our list is gracilis and sartorius. So we see gracilis right through here, and then sartorius running right along it, okay? So gracilis and sartorius. Next up on our list is both semimembranosus and semitendinosus. So we have semimembranosus and semitendinosus. Okay? So the only one that you do not have to identify on this image is plantaris. If you flip over to page 26 of your lab manual, that is the superficial leg. So let me get to that part. And on the superficial part of the anterior or ventral part of the leg, we need to identify gastrocnemius and soleus. So here's gastrocnemius and soleus. And then quadriceps femoris and tibialis anterior. So this is quadriceps femoris, and then this is the tendon of this muscle. And then also to identify tibialis anterior. Okay, so those are the only ones that you need to identify on this image. Our next image on page 27, if you look at page 27, is the dorsal image of what we were just looking at. I think it's down here. Let's see. Here we go. All right. On this image, we need to identify some muscles. The first one being biceps femoris. So you can see that this meets right there behind the knee, that popliteal area, okay? Next up, we have gastrocnemius. That's easy to identify. That's that double-bellied muscle of the calf. Gracilis is this yellow muscle right along here. And then just medial to that is sartorius, okay? Next on the list are semimembranosus, semitendinosus, and soleus. So we have soleus down here, right underneath of gastrocnemius, and it runs down further. Remember, gastrocnemius leads into the calcaneal tendon or the Achilles tendon. And then we have our semitendinosus here that runs up the thigh, as well as semimembranosus and gracilis and sartorius. Okay, so those are the muscles that you need to know on this image. You do not need to know plantaris, flexor digitorum longus, or fibularis longus, or flexor hallucis longus. You can cross those ones off. The next image that we're going to be looking at on page 28 involves the face and the neck. Okay, so this is our next image. On this one, we are being asked to identify levator scapulae. So when we look down here at the neck, levator scapulae is this orange muscle right here. Next on our list is masseter, this big chewing muscle, the muscle of mastication, not masturbation. I hope that made you all laugh. Next up on our list is splenius capitis. Splenius capitis lies just above levator scapulae. Next is sternocleidomastoid. It's this green muscle. It takes up a very large area. Sternocleidomastoid. Additionally, temporalis, so this yellow muscle right through here. And trapezius is our last one, this red one right through here. Okay, so those are the muscles that you need to identify on this image. The next image that we're going to look at is on page 29. And the ones that you're being asked to identify here are digastric, both the anterior and the posterior belly. So we have the number di, meaning 2, digastric. So this is the posterior belly because it's facing the posterior portion of the body, where this is the anterior portion. So this is facing the ventral or the anterior part of the body. So that's how this is divided. So you have digastric right here, and you have its posterior belly or its dorsal belly. And then on the anterior side is the digastric anterior belly or ventral part of the body. Next up, we have levator scapulae. So this one is a little bit harder to see in this image than it was the last one, because we are looking at a few other things here, but just focus on levator scapulae from the previous image. And then the next one it's asking you to identify is the splenius capitis, which lies right above. And then next, it is asking us to identify sternocleidomastoid, which again is this big green muscle right here, as well as sternohyoid, which is this purple area right through here, okay? And the last one it's asking us to identify is trapezius, right over here. Okay, so these are the only ones that you need to identify on this image. If you turn to page 30, we are looking at the neck and shoulders on the posterior portion of the body. So on this image, you're being asked to identify levator scapulae, so when we look at levator scapulae, it's purple in this image. Next, we have rhomboideus, both major and minor. So we have rhomboideus major down here. It's bigger than rhomboideus minor, which is this green one right here. Next, we have splenius capitis. That's this blue image right here and right here. Okay, it's cut. And then we have sternocleidomastoid, which is this purple right through here. And then the very last one is trapezius. Okay, the others you do not need to identify. If you look over on page 31, I'll get out of here. On this image, you're being asked to identify both supra and infraspinatus. So supra is above that line right through here. And then you can see where that little triangle is. It looks just like in the kitty cat. There's that little triangle there with the spine over the scapula. So that's how we differentiate between where supra and infraspinatus is. Next up, we are going to be looking at sacrospinalis muscle group or erector spinae muscle group. And that is going to include the iliocostalis muscles, which are iliocostalis lumborum, iliocostalis thoracis. So let's look at those. So iliocostalis lumborum. So notice what we are talking about here. The lumbar area, lumborum, and costalis. So we're talking about the costal area. Okay, so iliocostalis lumborum. And then up here we have iliocostalis thoracis. So we're talking about the thoracic region. Next up, we have longissimus capitis, which is this purple muscle right through here. And then we have longissimus cervicis, which is also in line with the longissimus capitis muscles. Okay. Next up is spinalis cervicis, which is referring to the cervical region. Okay. And then the others you do not have to know. So if we were to move over to page 32 now, if you look on page 32, let's see. Okay, we are on the right image. So for the deep muscles of the anterior thigh, on page 32 of your lab manual, the first one that we are going to identify is adductor brevis. So adductor brevis. if you remember what brevis means when we were studying bones in 211, brevis is referring to something that is short, stout. So that is adductor brevis right here. Adductor longus is this cut muscle that would extend, but it's dissected so that you can see adductor magnus as well as adductor brevis. Okay, so this is adductor magnus, adductor longus, and adductor brevis. Next up, we have gracilis. So we know that's on the medial portion of the thigh, as well as sartorius, but that has been cut as well because remember it extends up here. So you see sartorius here and here. And then, I'm sorry, I went out of order. Next up on our list is pectineus. So we have pectineus is also dissected away as well, but this is our pectineus muscle. That's done so that we can see adductor minimus and obturator externus. I'm sorry, those are not going to be included, so just pay attention to pectineus, okay, in this image. Next up, we have rectus femoris. So that has been cut as well, and remember that would come all the way down here, okay? So it's that little tiny piece that's cut right under sartorius and sort of under tensor fascia lata, okay? So after rectus femoris, we have sartorius, which I jumped ahead on right down here. And then we have our tensor fascia lata, which is this yellow one right here. So rectus femoris, if you can zoom in a little bit, you'll see that it's orange here, and then tensor fascia lata is the yellow one right next to the purple sartorius. And then the rest of these you do not need to know. So the next page that we're going to be looking at is 33. And instead of looking at the anterior ventral thigh, we're going to be looking at the dorsal thigh. So let me get there. So this is the one I'm looking for. Okay, so on this image, we are going to be identifying, we are being asked to identify adductor magnus. So that is this green image right here, adductor magnus. The next one on our list is biceps femoris. This is this big long muscle back here, okay? Next up, we have gastrocnemius, then gluteus maximus and medius. Those are both cut, but we also see minimus here too. So maximus, medius, and minimus. Maximus, medius, minimus. Next up on our list is gracilis, this yellow muscle of the medial thigh. After that is sartorius. Then we have semimembranosus right here, and then semitendinosus right here. And then the last one to identify here is vastus lateralis. Okay. Don't forget that gluteus maximus also drops down here, so it's been dissected back so that we can see underneath of like the butt cheeks, so to speak, so that we can see underneath of gluteus medius and gluteus maximus. So that is it for that image, and it looks like we're done, folks. So I will see you for lab and bring any questions that you have. And that is it.